You're sitting around a fire. Maybe it's a campfire on a trip you barely planned. Maybe it's a fireplace at someone's house or a fire pit in someone's backyard that nobody's maintaining very well. And at some point, you're not sure when, you stopped talking. You stopped checking your phone. You stopped thinking about that thing at work, or that email you haven't answered, or whatever mild catastrophe is currently sitting in your inbox quietly getting worse. You're just watching. The flame does its little thing. It bends, it splits, it pops, and you cannot look away. Nobody told you to do this. Nobody is making you. Your brain just locked in. And here's the thing. You're not the only one. Every person at that fire did the same thing. You all just silently agreed to stare into a small controlled combustion event for 20 minutes without discussing it. Why? Why does fire do that to us? The easy answer is that it's pretty, relaxing, meditative, fine, sure. But that answer is doing almost no work. Because the real answer goes back hundreds of thousands of years to a version of you that was cold, scared, and had just discovered that if you controlled this one terrifying thing, you could survive the night. And once you understand what fire actually meant to your ancestors, you'll never look at a crackling flame the same way again. You'll feel it differently, because it turns out, when you stare at fire, something very old in you is waking up. So here's what most people assume. They assume that fire is calming because it's pretty. Moving light, warm colors, something vaguely nature-adjacent in a world that is mostly beige office walls and fluorescent lighting. The same logic people use for why they like rain sounds, or aquariums, or those videos of someone raking sand into patterns. It's just a vibe. It just looks nice. And look, that's not crazy. It's not wrong exactly. But it's also a bit like saying you like music because it's loud in the right way. Technically true, massively incomplete. Because here's what researchers actually found when they sat down to measure what fire does to the human body. In 2014, a researcher named Christopher Dana Lynn published a study called Hearth and Campfire Influences on Arterial Blood Pressure in the journal Evolutionary Psychology. And his team did something very simple. They had people watch fire, some with sound, some without, and they measured blood pressure the whole time. The results were clear. Watching a fire lowered blood pressure. People relaxed. Not just a little. A measurable, dose-like effect. The longer someone watched the fire, the more their blood pressure dropped. And the strongest effect came from fire with sound. The crackle mattered. The pop mattered. The full sensory experience of a real fire, the light, the heat, the sound, was doing something specific to the nervous system. So it's not just aesthetics. Your body is literally physiologically responding to fire in a way that calms it down, which is interesting. Because fire is dangerous. Fire can kill you in several different ways that are all pretty bad. And yet your body's response to sitting near a controlled one is to downshift, to relax, to lower your heart rate and blood pressure and basically say, okay, we're good here. That is not the normal response to something dangerous. That is something stranger and older than that. And to understand it, you have to go back to a time when fire was not a vibe. It was the entire difference between making it through the night or not. Let's set the scene properly. We're talking about at minimum 1 million years ago, probably more. Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. A 2012 study in PNAS found microstratigraphic evidence of fire use in the cave deposits going back roughly 1 million years. Some newer analyses of the same site suggest traces that could go back even further, to somewhere between 1.07 and 1.79 million years ago. Though researchers are still actively working through what exactly that means. And at Gesher Benot Yaakov in Israel, a 2004 study in Science found burned seeds, burned wood, and burned flint, suggesting controlled fire use nearly 790,000 years ago. So we're talking deep time. Before farming, before writing, before cities, before money, religion, organized warfare, bread, any of it. Before modern humans even existed in the form we exist now, fire was there. And think about what it meant. You are a hominin. It's dark. Darkness, for basically every animal on the planet, means danger. Your vision drops off a cliff. Predators that were already better at this than you, big cats, hyenas, things with excellent night vision that are very motivated, are now active and moving and hunting. The temperature drops. Your group is harder to track and keep together. The night is, in a fairly literal sense, working against you, and then you have fire, a small circle of light in the dark, and that changes everything, not just practically, though practically, it changes everything, but psychologically. Because for the first time, darkness is not just danger. There's this small, controllable border. On one side, the unknown night. On the other side, the tribe, the warmth, the light, the food. The fire is not just heat. It's a boundary. It's a perimeter. It says, we are here, and the dark is out there, and those two things are currently separated. That's why staring at fire can feel strangely, inexplicably safe. Because for hundreds of thousands of years, it was the signal for safe. The brain learned. Fire at night meant you survived the day. It meant there were enough of you to keep it going. It meant predators were staying back. It meant food was coming. It meant the group was together. That is a very, very old pattern, and it is still in there. Here's where it gets genuinely strange. Fire didn't just protect humans at night, it changed what night was. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiesner published a study in PNAS called Firelight Talk of the Jew Hwansi Bushmen. The Jew Hwansi are a group of hunter-gatherers in southern Africa, and Wiesner spent years recording their conversations. She collected 174 daytime and nighttime conversations, plus 68 translated firelight stories, and she compared them. Daytime conversations were practical. Work, complaints, economics, social regulation, basically the ancient version of your morning meeting. Direct, functional, a lot of who did what and why was it wrong. Nighttime conversations around fire were completely different. They shifted toward stories, toward imagination, toward distant people, spirits, emotions, memory, social bonding. The fire created a different kind of time. It wasn't hunting time. It wasn't gathering time. It was imagination time. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, in a PNAS commentary on Wiesner's work, made a point that's hard to shake. He argued that firelit night wasn't just an extension of the day. It was a different social mode entirely. Daytime is practical. Nighttime around fire becomes emotional. It's where groups tell stories, repair bonds, teach children what happened before they were born, explain why things are the way they are, pass warnings across generations. Fire may have been humanity's first shared screen. Before phones, before books, before movies, before any of it, people stared into flames and told stories. They looked into the same moving light. They shared the same experience. And in doing that, over thousands of years, they built something that we still carry. The fire didn't just extend the day, it invented a kind of time that didn't exist before. And what humans did with that time, what it actually did to the structure of human society, that's where it gets strange. Now here is where it gets counterintuitive in a way that I find kind of hilarious given where we ended up as a species. Fire, for ancient humans, was a skill. It was a technology. It was something you learned, mastered, worked at. You had to know how to collect fuel, how to pick dry wood versus wet, how to control smoke, how to keep embers alive through the night, how to read wind, how to cook without burning your food or burning your shelter or burning yourself. It was active, practical, demanding knowledge. A hunter-gatherer child learned fire the way a modern kid learns a phone. It was just part of the world you were supposed to understand. UCLA researcher Daniel Fessler published a paper in 2006 in the Journal of Cognition and Culture called A Burning Desire: Steps Toward an Evolutionary Psychology of Fire Learning. His argument was this: fire was so critical to human survival, but also so dangerous, that we probably evolved a specific psychological drive to learn about it. A fascination that pushed us toward fire, pushed us to understand it, pushed us to master it. Here's the part that gets you. Fessler found evidence that fire fascination is strongest when fire mastery is incomplete. In societies where kids regularly learn to use fire as a practical skill, the fascination decreases once they become competent. They learn it. They satisfy the system. The ancient drive goes quiet. The ancient version of this was, I can keep a fire alive through winter. I can read smoke. I know how to bank embers so they're still alive in the morning. I'm genuinely competent at a thing that determines whether my family survives. The modern version is, I figured out how to light the pilot light on the water heater, and I'm honestly a little proud of myself about it. The skill got outsourced. The drive never got the memo. Because in modern life, most people never truly master fire. We see it in completely controlled decorative forms. Candles, gas fireplaces with a switch, carefully maintained campfires someone else built, videos of fires on a laptop screen that people actually watch to relax, which is its own whole thing. We never actually learn the skill the ancient system was pushing us toward. The drive to understand fire never gets satisfied, so we still feel it. The ancient part of the brain is still asking, do you know how to control this? Do you understand this yet? Maybe we stare because the answer is still no. And while we're talking about what fire looks like to a brain, let's actually talk about what fire looks like to a brain. And by that I mean your visual system, the thing that's been refined by a few 100 million years of evolution to keep you alive, has a very specific opinion about fire. A 2022 study in the Journal of Vision, led by researchers looking at threat detection and visual priority, found evidence suggesting that fire receives what they called privileged visual attention, meaning your brain notices fire and prioritizes it in a way it doesn't prioritize most things. Your visual cortex essentially bumps fire to the front of the queue, which makes sense when you think about it from a design standpoint. Fire is visually bizarre. It moves, but stays in one place. It's bright against darkness. It changes constantly, but never repeats exactly. It looks alive. It has behavior. It responds to things. But it is not alive. It is a chemical process that your ancient visual system has decided to treat like a living threat. Your brain is built to track motion, built to notice light and darkness, built to monitor threats, built to respond to change. Fire is hitting every single one of those triggers simultaneously, constantly, without stopping. A flame is almost impossible for the brain to ignore because the brain is specifically designed to catch exactly this kind of thing. And in 2025, this means that the same attention system that evolved to spot a predator moving through grassland 800,000 years ago is now absolutely laser-locked on your friend's decorative Himalayan salt lamp. This system is not picky, it is just very, very old, and it is doing its job. But, and this is the important part, fire is not making you run, it's making you watch. Most things that move quickly require action. A predator moves, you run. A falling tree moves, you dodge. Your boss walks in, and you immediately minimize your browser, whatever. But fire moves constantly while mostly staying put. It gives the brain something genuinely rare: movement without immediate chase, danger without immediate attack, change without requiring a response. Your attention is captured, your fight or flight is not, and so you just watch. The nervous system goes into this unusual state where it's engaged but not alarmed, alert but not anxious. Fire gives the brain a threat it can watch without running from. That may be the deepest answer for why it feels hypnotic. The word hypnotic actually makes sense here, because hypnosis is, in part, what happens when you achieve focused attention without agitation. That's what fire gives you, naturally, without you deciding to do it. There's one more piece, and it's probably the most primal one. In 2022, a study in Nature Ecology and Evolution looked at fish remains from Gesher Benot Yaakov in Israel and found something remarkable. Hominins were cooking fish there around 780,000 years ago. The researchers identified fish teeth that had been exposed to low-temperature heat under 500 degrees Celsius, consistent with controlled cooking rather than a wildfire. The fish were cooked and eaten on site. It's the earliest direct evidence of cooking by hominins, 780,000 years ago. Someone sat next to a fire and cooked dinner, which honestly feels like it deserves more recognition than it gets, because that is the moment where fire stopped being just survival infrastructure and became something you did with food. That's a different relationship entirely. And think about what fire meant in that context. It wasn't just warmth. It wasn't just predator defense. It was food transformation. Food that was dangerous became safe. Food that was tough became soft. Food that was indigestible became nourishing. The smell of something cooking over fire was, for hundreds of thousands of years, one of the most important signals a human could receive. It meant, you are eating tonight. It meant, the group is successful. It meant, we made it through another day, and now there is food and heat and people, and we are still here. So when you smell a campfire and feel something you can't quite name, something that isn't quite nostalgia but is adjacent to it, that's not weird. That's a very long memory. Your brain recognizes that combination of smell, heat, light, and sound and reaches back across an almost incomprehensible amount of time and says, this is good. This means good things. Stay here. Now bring it to you, specifically. You, sitting in front of a fire you did nothing to earn. You didn't build it. You didn't gather the wood. You didn't keep it alive through the night. You have no practical skill being tested. You are not on watch for predators. You are not waiting for your food to finish cooking. Your ancestors kept fires going as a matter of life and death, sometimes through conditions you genuinely don't want to think about. You watched a 4-hour fireplace video on YouTube in March because you were stressed about rent, and yet your body responded the same way. Blood pressure down, shoulders dropped, phone forgotten. That gap between what fire meant and what fire is now is kind of staggering when you actually look at it. But here's the thing, your brain doesn't care. Your brain is not reading the room on this one. It sees the fire, hears the crackle, and it just runs the old program every time. Your blood pressure drops, your shoulders come down, your phone stops mattering, you stop constructing sentences in your head. You just look. That is not you being zoned out. That is not you being tired. That is hundreds of thousands of years of neurological history responding to a signal that was one of the most reliable safety cues your species ever had. Darkness outside, light inside, predators away, people close, food cooking, stories starting. Every single element of that picture is still present when you sit around a campfire with people you like. Your brain doesn't know you're in 2025. It doesn't know that the predators aren't coming. It doesn't know that you have a thermostat and a refrigerator and that the darkness outside is actually just the suburb. It sees the fire, it hears the crackle, and it says, "We survived again. We're here. We're together. Everything's okay." You are not staring at fire because it's pretty. You are staring at fire because your brain is receiving a signal it has trusted for longer than your species has had language to describe it. Now here's what we still don't know. Because this is science, and science is honest about the gaps, we don't know exactly how old fire use is because the physical evidence degrades and the timeline keeps getting pushed back as new analyses come in. We don't know precisely when the neurological response to fire was encoded in the way we carry it now. We don't know whether the blood pressure drop from watching fire is uniquely about fire, or whether it shares mechanisms with other absorptive, multisensory, low-threat experiences. Lynn's 2014 study was specific about fire, but the deeper question of why the nervous system responds this way, the exact mechanism, is still being worked out. And there's a genuinely hard question underneath all of this. How much of what you feel at a fire is ancient, and how much is cultural? The campfire is a powerful symbol in almost every human tradition. You grew up knowing that campfires are supposed to feel meaningful. How much of the feeling is body memory, and how much is regular memory? That line is genuinely hard to find. What we do know is that the response is real. It's measurable. It shows up across cultures with no single common explanation for it, and it's been running in humans long enough that it probably feels less like a reaction and more like a memory. Which brings us back to you. Sitting in front of a fire, you did absolutely nothing to earn. So, you're sitting around that fire again, the one from the beginning, the one where you stopped talking, stopped scrolling, stopped thinking about your inbox, and everyone else did too. You know now that your blood pressure probably dropped. You know that your brain was tracking that flame with a priority it normally reserves for things that require action, but that fire's weird contained movement let you stay calm enough to just watch. You know that the crackle was doing something separate from the light. A multisensory signal that your nervous system has been reading since before your species existed in its current form. You know that the darkness around that fire wasn't just dark, it was the ancient outside, and the fire was the ancient inside, and your brain knew the difference immediately. You know that somewhere in your deep past, someone sat in almost exactly this position, watching almost exactly this light, and the fire meant their family was fed, and the predators were back, and they were going to wake up tomorrow. And somewhere in a brain very much like yours, it felt like everything was going to be okay. You're still carrying that. All of it. In a body that learned fire before it learned farming, before it learned writing, before it learned any of the thousands of things you think of as human. The next time you can't look away from a flame, you're not being simple. You're not zoning out. Your brain is receiving a signal it has trusted for about 1,000,000 years, and it believes every word of it.